Now, I want to discuss the Boston Bruins because every week it's the same thing. How in the world can you have the Boston Bruins down below the top 10 in your power rankings? They were number 6 last week because they had a nice push, and now they're back outside the top 10 this week. So I can explain this by looking at the record since December 5th. Their problems start December 5th. We'll trace backwards a little bit. So their most recent loss was at home against the Oilers 4-1. I thanked the Oilers for beating them 4-1 in regulation because it stopped. Hopefully, it stopped the we can just cover all this up and say it's okay because they're losing an overtime narrative, which is really stupid. In the 4-1 loss, Pasternak scores at 3:10 of the first period. They were ahead 1-0 at that point, and no more goals. And they had, of course, no goals 5-on-5. The game prior to that, they lost to Columbus. If you see a red asterisk, that's a team that's outside the playoffs. I could have had Edmonton as outside the playoffs as recently as a week ago, right? Or a couple days ago even. So Columbus, they lost 2-1 in overtime. Pasternak scores a power play goal at 11:07 of the second period to make it 1-0, and they got nothing 5-on-5. They have not got a 5-on-5 goal yet in 2 games in January. But yes, by all means, they need to stay really high up in the power rankings because why not? December 31st at New Jersey, they lost 3-2 in overtime. There were Devils fans that were like, hey, you're not giving the Devils credit for playing well. I understand that when you're looking at it as a one-game, one-off situation, which is how they would have seen it, that's how it looks. But for me, as somebody who's watched Boston, I watch as much hockey as I can, Boston didn't play well either. So they lost 3-2. Marchand had a power play goal at 2:03 of the first. They had been ahead 2-0 at one point in this game. They lost at 3-2 in overtime. They had 1 goal 5-on-5. That's 1 goal in their last 3 games 5-on-5. Prior to that, on December 29th, at home against Buffalo, they scored 2 power play goals in a 3-2 victory. So they had 1 5-on-5 goal in that victory. On the 27th, at Buffalo, they won 3-0. Power play goal and an empty netter were amongst that, meaning they had 1 5-on-5 goal that wasn't an empty netter. They had 2 5-on-5 goals overall. So, which means I got to change this. Got to change this because before I get to it, I got to change that. So, I move them apart a little bit, or else it looks like 225. So that's 2 wins back-to-back against Buffalo. Half of their wins in their last 15 games have been against the Sabres. Prior to that, of course, December 23rd, the game everybody will want you to say, teams were distracted by Christmas. It doesn't matter. They beat the Capitals 7-3. That was the excuse being given on December 23rd. Everybody's already opening Christmas presents, thinking about Christmas, so these games don't count. So that's their biggest victory. And not only that, it's where they scored a majority of their goals. So 7-3, they had 2 power play goals, 2 empty netters, 1 shorthanded goal. Special teams have been pretty good for them. They had 4 5-on-5 goals that game, with the 1 shorthanded and 2 power play goals. So, December 21st, at home against Nashville, they had lost 4-3 in overtime. Bergeron had a power play goal in that one. They had 2 goals 5-on-5. December 19th, at home against New York Islanders, they lost 3-2 in a shootout. Krug scores a power play goal. They had 1 5-on-5 goal. At home against the LA Kings, they lost 4-3 in overtime. Heinen had a power play goal. They had 2 5-on-5 goals that game. December, I believe that was the 15th against the Florida Panthers. It was 15th or 14th. The dates don't really matter too much. At Florida, they won 4-2. Pasternak with a power play goal, and there was an empty netter. So there were 3 5-on-5 goals in that one. The empty netters, I keep forgetting, are technically 5-on-5. Technically 5-on-5, right? So that's 3 5-on-5 goals in that one. At Tampa Bay on the 12th, they lost 3-2. They had no power play goals in that one, so they had 2 5-on-5 goals in that. They had no power play goals at Washington where they lost 3-2. So it's a problem. And then prior to that, at the Ottawa Senators, they lost 5-2, and DeBrusk had 1 power play goal in that game, so they had 1 5-on-5 goal in that one. There's the 2 against Washington I didn't count. I just qualified this all as PTSD. The goal against Colorado, not a power play goal, that was a 5-on-5. Notice I said goal. They lost 4-1 against Colorado. And they lost 4-3 in overtime against the Chicago Blackhawks. There was a shorthanded goal in that one, so 2 5-on-5 goals. Their record since December 5th. 4 wins, 5 losses, and 6, count them 6, overtime or shootout losses. One of them's in a shootout. 5 of them are in overtime. So 5 of them were 3-on-3 plays. 5 times they go into overtime and they lose. This is why when they were against Edmonton yesterday, I said, please don't let this be a loss in overtime because I don't want to see it again. They're 3-1-5 against non-playoff teams. So again, a Bruins fan can come in and say, hey, they've only lost 1 game in regulation against non-playoff teams. I could answer with they've only won 3 out of 9 against non-playoff teams, and 2 of those were against Buffalo. 2. They're 1-4-1 against playoff teams since December 5th. And yet Gerard Gallant's getting asked at press conferences about how his team's performing against teams above theirs in the standings. How about how Boston's playing against teams that are in the playoffs? It's not well. They haven't had an overly difficult schedule. They've had a lot of home games. They had this homestand here, 4 games. They won 1 of them. 1. They've lost both games at home in this homestand. And they lost a couple here. But again, as long as they're losing in overtime, as long as they're getting their points, people will continue to say, hey, well, look, they're second overall. Look, they're second overall. They've had 2 goals or less 8 times. 8. They've scored 39 goals in their last 15 games. That's well below 3 per game, and they've allowed 46. Their goal differential is a -7 over their last 15 games. But because they had such a good start to the season and because things were going so well for them, people aren't paying attention to that. They just look at where they're in the standings, they go, eh. And this is why when you look at power rankings, whether it's TSN, Sportsnet, ESPN, or NHL.com, Boston's still going to be highly regarded. I look at this and I say, man, I don't even know if I want to have them in the top 12. I don't know if I can justify having them anywhere near. They've won 4 out of 15 games, and 2 are against Buffalo. I apologize to Buffalo fans everywhere. It's just the fact that 2 of their 15 wins are against the same team. They're back-to-back. The one against Washington, again, it was the before Christmas game where they don't count. And the other win was against Florida. Not a playoff team. So it is concerning. And if you're a Bruins fan and you're going, it doesn't matter. They're still first in the division. That's a problem. It's a problem because Toronto's got a lot better. Tampa's got a lot better. I talked about that in the power rankings. Ranked them higher than Boston in the power rankings, and for good reason. But honestly, there are there are a number of situations I think could come out of this where expecting the team to just turn it on and turn it around, I think, is short-sighted. And again, if a team comes out of the gate with 4, 5, and 6 record, and here's a question I'll ask as well. If this record was being sported by Montreal, are we going to give them the benefit of the doubt? No. If Tampa had 4 wins in their last 15 games, we would see numerous calls for John Cooper's job. If almost any other team in the NHL had a record of 4, 5, and 6, if the Canucks had a record of 4, 5, and 6 in their last 15, everybody everywhere would be going, see, Jim Benning's a moron. He's an idiot. Look what he's done. But because Boston started the season really, really well, because they padded their stats really early in the season, nobody's paying attention to this. Because Pastrnak keeps putting up goals, because Pastrnak keeps getting points, because that top line is the only line that's really producing with any consistency, people can point at Marchand, Pastrnak, and Bergeron's production and go, well, they're doing really well. Boston's playing pretty well right now. The numbers for Rask and Halak have been good. The numbers for Rask and Halak have been coming down over this 15-game period, but only slowly. It's not like they're losing 8-1, and that's the problem. I kind of want to see them get blown out 8-1. I kind of want to see a game that gets so far away from them, these guys have to go out on the ice at practice and go, we've got to fix this. Because as long as that 6 is on the board, fans can turn around and say they've only lost 5 in regulation of their last 15. Shannon's crazy. He's just hard on teams that he cheers for. This is how it works. And they can ignore the 4. That 6 means there's too many people ignoring 4 wins in their last 15. Go look at the standings and just look at wins. Look at how many wins the Boston Bruins have right now in comparison with other teams in their division, in the NHL, and they're really not that far ahead. They have 24 wins in 43 games. They're not playing exceptionally well. That's 19 games they didn't win that they've played so far this season. And I really do wonder just how many games these guys are going to have to lose before they realize they need to turn around. I thought after those back-to-backs against Buffalo that they were figuring it out. I thought, okay, the win against the Caps and the back-to-back against Buffalo, it looks like they're figuring it out. Nope. They go into New Jersey. They had a 2-0 lead and they blew it. And then against Columbus and against Edmonton, they managed 1 goal. They have 4 goals in their last 3 games, and only one of them has been 5-on-5. I can't make it look nice because it's not. 39 goals in 15 games. It's not 3 goals a game. And this is a league now where 3 goals a game is kind of the expectation at minimum if you're going to make the playoffs. So how long can this go on? And again, yeah, they're number 2 in the overall standings. I don't think they can be number 2 for much longer. And the best thing that can happen to these guys right now would be a game where they just get thumped. And the closest you can get on this board is the Colorado loss 4-1 and the Edmonton loss yesterday 4-1. Because that's the only way I see them getting better. It's not on Marchand. Marchand's still playing well. It's not on Pasternak. It's not on Bergeron. I'd go as far as to say I don't think it's on Torrey Krug either. Krug's playing as well as he can. But I don't know that there's anybody else in Boston right now. Maybe Jake DeBrusk, who I would say has had a really good last 15 games. And I can't say anything negative about their game right now. Boston's in trouble. Because this is now a month. It's a month of playing some poor games against some teams they're supposed to be able to defeat. That 5-2 loss at Ottawa, that really should have been the wake-up call. And then they went to Washington and Tampa and lost those ones too. And that was after the loss against Colorado, after the loss against Chicago. That's 5 games in a row they went without a win. They won 1 here, and they lost the next 3. But again, they were all in extra time. They win 3 here, and they followed up by losing the next 3. But 2 of those are in extra time, and there's that shootout in here against the Islanders, so it's not really that bad. Or is it? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always, and I know everybody will. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.